Hi there, it's me, Brianna, and you are listening to Are We Caught Up Yet? Marvel Edition. You can find us on youtube.com/Save the Game Media and podcast services. If you want to show Save the Game Media some extra love and get early access to our content, you can find us at patreon.com/Save the Game Media. We do have a special patron this week, the good sir. They are at the free tier. So we have a 7-day free tier. If you guys want to check that out, and then that way you can kind of see what we're offering. And yeah, it's risk free. Just check it out. Today I'm joined by my co-host and friend, Sam. Nobody's surprised, but here he is.
I am.
How are you today? What have you been watching? All that fun stuff.
I'm good. Same answer as always. Unfortunately, very busy. But I'm well. I slept better the past couple of nights.
Oh,
I
that's
can't.
good to hear.
No, because I would have mentioned that on No Limits, which you should also listen to. But yeah, I've been struggling to sleep for about a week and a half now. And for the past couple of days.
So that might be his microphone going out. Yep. Okay, that's his microphone going out. So just to recap what he was saying. Having trouble sleeping. However, my theory is that he hasn't had trouble sleeping the past few days because been a lot of physical moving. So that's my theory.
No, that's that. I don't think that's it. That's not related.
Oh, really?
I think. Yeah, no, but I've slept better, so that's good.
You know what it was? We've talked for 2 days in a row. The anticipation of talking to me the next day, sleep better.
No, that's not it either. That's not it either. What have I been watching? Not much, to be honest. Which is, a disappointing answer, but there we are. I have nearly finished Echo, the latest Marvel series on Disney Plus. I have been watching The Bear. I think I mentioned that the last time we recorded. We're on the second season of that now. I think that's it.
Okay.
That's it for me.
Okay.
What about you?
Doing okay. Still on the not sleeping train.
Choo-choo.
I am wearing a Miguel O'Hara sweatshirt.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody knows how I feel about Miguel O'Hara. So
Yep.
maybe that's the key to my good sleep, is wearing this sweater to bed. No, I would never, because these sweaters snag really easily, and my cat likes to claw. Not like literally claw me. She's not like attacking me, but she likes to use her claws to get my attention. So this sweater would end up very raggedy very quickly. So, what have I been watching? To no one's surprise, I started watching The Office again. I've been watching some anime. We've got the new season that started a few weeks ago now, like 3 weeks ago. So been watching Solo Leveling. If you know, you know. Oh, I'm so excited about that show. And I've been watching A Sign of Affection, which is really such an incredible romance anime. And it's so cool to see sign language animated. Like, I love it so much. And I think that's all for the current anime thus far. I have been watching Mashal, which is a Harry Potter spoof, basically. It's like a Harry Potter spoof anime, but like the main character that's supposed to be Harry Potter just doesn't have magic. But everybody thinks he has magic because he's so buff and so strong.
Yeah.
That he could just like there's one of the scenes that's early on is that like somebody casts a spell at him and he just like smacks it. It's really funny. I love Harry Potter. I've been reading a lot of Harry Potter fan fiction recently. So this is just like it's just perfect to add on to my Harry Potter craziness.
Yeah.
I've also been reading this book series. It's actually called Sex Wizards. That's not ironic. And it's actually been really incredibly good. Like the magic system is incredible. Like it's so well thought out. Like so well thought out. And you wouldn't think it would be. You'd think it's like, hey, that just sounds like a crazy book. But the magic system is actually incredible.
Mm.
I've also been reading. So I'm like on book 3 of that.
Cool.
What have I been up to? Alrighty. Well, today we're gonna be talking about one other thing that I watched. I don't know if you had time to watch this one again, but it is
In the background.
it's an incredibly long movie. um, Endgame. I believe the full name is Avengers Endgame. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure. Okay. Okay, cool beans. So we will start with my first impression / general thoughts on Endgame, since Sam refuses to go first. Let's see. I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was incredible. I thought that there were a lot of things that paid off. However, I also think that there were a lot of things that could have paid off a little bit better with a little bit more foresight in other films. So,
Mm.
yeah, I thought it was really, really,
Okay.
really fantastic, but I think it could have been like a 10 out of 10. So, what about you?
Yeah, I probably do think it is a 10 out of 10. Mainly just due to the fact that there were in reality so many factors in the same way of Doctor Strange, envisioning all of those different futures, and there's only one where they win. The odds were stacked against this film, and for it to turn out as good as it is pretty miraculous in my opinion. I agree that there are some things that I think could have packed even more of a punch if they had laid a little bit more groundwork. I'll call one out right now, like the stuff with Thor and his mom. I think like that was a very touching, poignant moment and whatnot with a nice message, but also we didn't really get much of his mum or specifically his relationship with his mum. So there's that sort of stuff I think could have been improved, but I don't think it was in any way not good. I think at a base level, pretty much everything in this film is great. Yeah, but like for the amount of characters, I don't feel like really anybody got shortchanged all that much. I feel like it focused on the characters that it should have focused on. I feel that a lot of the payoffs and callbacks are incredibly clever. And as like the culmination, as like a shining beacon of what not only creatives both in front of and behind the camera can accomplish over a 10-year period, but also how rewarding that can be as a fan who has persisted throughout the franchise up to this point. I think there's not really another film, or even piece of media gets a bit more murky, but I don't think there's a film that really does what this film does. Certainly not as well as this film does. So yeah, it's pretty remarkable in my book.
Okay. Just to be clear, and I want to get this like ahead. I do think that this movie is like a 9, maybe 9.5 out of 10.
No, you think it's trash. It's all right. No, I'll accept it.
I actually thought it was like a 1 out of 10, but I wasn't going to say anything. I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah.
No, I think my biggest disappointments were like how I know that like there's okay, that's not true. The scenes that we see where they go to the like alternate dimension or whatever you want to call it, like the past or whatever, where they're creating like a different thing, but they're not, whatever like that is. I wish that those scenes were like reflected in the older films.
Right. So what you mean is, for example, because they time traveled back to the Battle of New York from the first Avengers film, if you then went back and watched the first Avengers film, if there just happened to be something in the background that very obviously you could call out as, oh, that's them from Endgame.
Maybe not even necessarily that, but one example that I think would have been really cool is just like a scene where Hulk is acting slightly different. Like, oh, he doesn't seem as angry. That's weird.
I mean,
And
yes, but also you have to admit Hulk looks pretty different in this film compared to what he
yes,
did back then. So
yes, but I would have suspense of disbelief that one.
sure. Yeah, I mean,
That's just an example. That's
I
just
know
an
what you mean.
example.
And in an ideal world, it would be really cool. Like, I would love having seen this film to go back. And obviously, it's rewarding anyway to go back and watch the films that this film goes back to anyway, I think, in my opinion. But I
Yeah.
agree that it would be like super awesome from a fan perspective, even more fan fulfillment to go
Yeah.
back and be
And
like, oh my God.
mhm.
But
Okay, here's another one where it's like when Thor talks to his mom, like the his whole thing where it's like, oh, you don't really see his relationship with his mom. That didn't bother me as much. I guess this
mm,
isn't even like something that bothered me. I'm saying like this is what put it to like a 9.5 to a 9 instead of like a 10 out of 10. But like something in the film, that the last film you see her just like, hey, sorry I'm late, guys. I was busy. I had to chat with somebody. Like a simple line like that where it's like, oh, now you know why she was late.
mm,
I don't know.
yeah.
I
But,
think that
you
stuff would have
know,
been really cool.
it's cool. It's completely in with the reality of how these films are made, and they yes have a general sense of like, oh, we'll introduce this character and this character and this character before this next Avengers film. But they, in terms of that kind of minutia, I think that is no. I'm not like suggesting your thing is a bad idea, but I think just the realities of filmmaking means that
Right.
is almost completely impossible.
Yeah.
Um,
I just kind of
so
wanted to get this out of the way so that way I can just be hype about the film and don't have to like bring
sure,
this up every
yeah.
once in a while. The other thing that I noticed that bugged me, and I know that this is so silly, but I just wanted to point it out because it bugged me. There's a scene with Ant-Man being like big when he's supposed to be doing something else.
Yeah, that's a pretty big
I was like,
oversight. It's quite well known. Yeah,
okay.
in the big fight at the end, he's giant and holding one of those flying snake things when he's meant to be in the van with the wasp. And yeah, that they've called it out as like it was a mistake. Just ignore it.
So awkward. I mean, I think you could like logically explain it away, like, oh, the van randomly got attacked, and so we had to go big
He
randomly, and yeah,
jumped out for a second or
yeah,
something,
yeah,
but
you could, but
still,
I was also like,
wait a minute. Yeah.
so that was my other big complaint about the film, and that's not
Hmm.
very big. So,
Yeah.
all right, let's get to talking about this 9 to 9.5 out of 10, or a
Okay.
10 out of 10 for Sam.
Okay.
Um, we usually start with soundtrack. I'm actually going to hold off on that because there's a particular piece. Oh, I forgot. There's one other thing that I hated.
Oh God.
Captain Marvel's hair. What is going on?
Interesting. I'm quite a fan of the shortcut, to be honest.
Listen, I love a beautiful mask, but I was like, what's happening? I don't like it. Anyways,
Yeah, well,
that one's
you're
not
going to
for
be in
Sam.
luck because every single time we see her, she's got a different hairstyle. So, you know,
Okay, well, this
you're
one
not going to be
wasn't it.
stuck with this one for long. Yeah,
This one was not it.
yeah,
Also, Thor, not it. But
worth it for the comedy there.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, that was the other thing. Okay, so Bechdel test for sure passes.
Hmm.
For sure passes. I had to think about that for a second. Um, okay, so I think I want to tackle this film. For me, I feel like there's like 3 to 4 like main sections of this film that happen. So I think I
Okay.
wanted to kind of tackle it in sections, if that's cool with you.
Yep.
All right. So Endgame. So we start from the plot just after. Actually, sorry, we start with Hawkeye, which shocked me. Not a bad way. Not a bad way. It was just like, oh, interesting. I guess we hadn't seen his perspective.
Hmm.
Um, and so we start with the snap with him, and his whole family's gone. Really awkward 50% population.
Bit unlucky there, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's where we start, and then we have a small. I think it's like just a little bit past the snap.
Hmm.
We see a bunch of people kind of reunited. So we have Bruce Banner, Steve Rogers, Thor, Natasha Romanoff, and James Rhodes, and Rocket.
Hmm.
So they're on Earth. They're trying to. How come Nebula is not listed here? That's weird.
Because she's
Um.
with
Oh,
Tony,
because
right?
she's with Tony.
In the ship.
Thank you. Thank you. You're right. Okay, so then they do end up showing up after that whole thing, right? So then we have this small section where they're like, we need to find Thanos, we need to get the Infinity Stones back, then we need to fix this. That's like this like slice of film. And then they pretty easily ish, I would say, find him.
Hmm.
Mostly because Nebula's like, yeah, he's always talked about where he wants to go. We go there, we talk to him, the Infinity Stones are destroyed with the Infinity Stones, which feels like such a weird thing to me. Like, I know that they can do anything, but that feels like you know how genies have rules? That feels like a rule that should have been set in place with the stones.
But
But
then that's kind of like freeing the genie, isn't it? In
yeah,
essence, so that
yeah.
they can't grant any more wishes, which, depending
But then
on
then
which.
the genie still exists.
Sure. But then I think you could maybe suggest that, like, the energy of the stones still exists because they're sort of
Mm,
fundamental building blocks of the universe, but it's just that they don't exist in their material form anymore.
okay, that's fair. I like that. So then, yeah, so he's all messed up and like limping around and gardening at the garden.
Hmm.
And yeah, they beat him up very quickly because he's already all messed up. And there's like a couple of sentences of dialogue, and then they just behead him. And I think
Hmm.
I kind of liked that moment because it feels like everybody was shocked that that happened. I gasped in real life. I was like, oh my God, Luna. I always talk to
Yeah.
my cat during these films. So I was like, I gasped. I was like, oh my God, did you see that?
Well, I
And
mean, the assumption was that, I mean, technically he is, but the assumption was that, Thanos was still going to be the big bad. Funny story.
mhm,
I went to this opening night, of course,
of course.
um, with my mum, and as a joke, I got a yellow washing up glove, and I put like stones on it. I think I can't remember what it was. It might have just been like printed out pictures on each of the knuckles. And I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be funny. So I put it on as I was sitting down in the cinema, and then he got beheaded, and I just sort of very slowly and sadly pulled the glove off. So I was like, oh, okay, maybe not
Uh,
then. Um,
okay.
yeah, no, I think it's a nice way of pulling the rug out from under the audience,
Hmm.
because like, you wouldn't necessarily know from the marketing of this film, and like people have been talking about it for years, obviously. but this was filmed back to back with Infinity War and came out essentially directly a year after Infinity War. So all of the marketing stuff was saying Thanos is going to be the big bad. And you would assume that's the case because of the role he played in Infinity War. So for Thor to do it, and then whilst, you know, he justifies doing it by calling back to the mistake he made in Infinity War by not going for the head. So he just killed him by, which
Yeah,
I think he pulls out.
I think I really liked that moment just because like he was shocked as well what he had done. Like it was almost like he was surprised as well, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, just impulsive.
So that's like the first, I would say, like slice of the film, because then they're like, well, like there's nothing we can really do, and we kind of cut away from that.
Yeah.
Anything in particular you want to say about that slice before we move on to the
Not particularly. I like how morose the opening of the film is, how sort of foreboding and stuff, like the idea of tracking him down and stuff. And, you know, he says, let's go get this son of a bit. And then it cuts to the title credits and stuff. It's sort of, I think that this opening section of the film leads you on a very good roller coaster of a journey. It starts very subdued, obviously, with Hawkeye losing his family, and then you have like Tony recording a message trapped on that ship and being like, the oxygen's about to run out, food's gone. You know, I think recording a message for Pepper, and then everyone gets back together and they're saved, and then like, let's go get him, and then they find him, and you're expecting like this big kick-ass fight, and it like Thanos stuck to his word. He said that he'd do his thing, and then he'd sit peacefully and smile at a grateful universe, and that's what he was doing.
There is one thing with this that made me giggle, not this part, but made me giggle the second time it happens. But like where he's like, I am inevitable, him like watching the recording of himself saying that and being like, hey, I kind of like that line. That made me laugh so hard because I was just imagining him being like, I have to use that.
Yeah.
And him just planning on saying that. I don't know why that just like is so funny to me.
I think he just takes, particularly because of the second time around, you know, he said like doing the 50% thing obviously didn't work exactly the way he wanted to. So he was just going to wipe everything this time around. I think he was just taking a bit more sadistic pleasure in it. You know, like I know they've heard this already and lost. I'm going to say it again, and they're going to lose even harder. You know?
Yeah.
Because he'd gone from being a bit like in his head benevolent in doing what he did in Infinity War to just being like, no, I'm going to be the creator of the next universe, which is deluded. Yeah,
that is a tiny bit crazy. Okay, next section here is 5 years later. We get a rat.
The gasps in the audience when that title screen came up, and it goes up word by word. The gasps.
Yeah.
That
sounds like it would be a really cool experience.
Too
late for me. Anyways, okay, so we get Scott Lang, Ant-Man, trapped in the quantum realm, gets released by a rat.
Yep.
This is one of the few messages I sent Sam. I said, a rat? All right. It's not like a suspense of disbelief thing. Like, I get it. Rat walked over. It just was like, a rat? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you can view it as just like a stupid thing, but it also is kind of thematic in terms of like the tone and vibe of the Ant-Man films thus far. But also, I kind of like that it just happened by chance, you know? But then you go down the rabbit hole of, well, did it happen by chance, or that scenario playing out the way that it had to? Was there some kind of like omnipotent intervention, you know? And I'm not saying that that is inferred in any future titles, because it's not. But I just kind of like that with how random it is that it happened, and that him getting out at that time is exactly what needed to happen for them to win.
Mm-hmm.
I quite like the sort of headcanon that maybe, you know, that rat was secretly Stan Lee, you know?
Yeah.
I'm joking about
Yeah.
that last bit, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. The rat was secretly trained by Doctor Strange.
Yes, that's it. That's it.
Rats don't live that long, but you know, it's possible. Okay, so we have like a interesting scene with him, kind of very Walking Dead-esque of like, oh, what's going on? The world's completely changed now that I'm suddenly aware of what's going on. So then he kind of theorizes like, hey, I think we can do a time heist. And they need Tony Stark to help, and he's like, I got some stuff going on here, which I genuinely don't blame him. I'm like, yeah, you got a kid. And then they try and have.
He was talking about having a kid in the last film, and now he has a kid. Yeah.
Very cute one, very funny one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. So then we get Hulk trying to fix it, and it doesn't work.
I feel like you're skipping a major thing there.
What?
Because Hulk is like Major Daddy vibes now.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
Bruce and Hulk figured out whatever issues they were having in Infinity War, and he says best of both worlds. And honestly, looking at him, I can't say I disagree. People do have a problem that he's not like this hulking like rage monster thing anymore, and I get that, but I don't know. I like, canonically he's called Professor Hulk now, and I like that. I wish he was wearing like a lab coat, you know, throughout the film. I just think that would like complete the look with his glasses and stuff.
I think I would have liked like a cardigan with like the elbow patch.
Yeah, that too. That too.
Yeah. Shocking that like he's like fixed everything, and Natasha's not like, all right, now's my time.
Yeah, I suppose.
I'm just kidding. Okay, so we have this whole like they have to figure out how to do a time heist, go back in time, get the stones, fix everything by doing another snap. And trying to make sure that I have. Oh, then we do see the new Asgardian settlement with a really interesting Thor. And Korg, very important.
He's still there playing Fortnite.
I know. I love that he's like, will you talk to him?
Thank you, Thor.
So funny. Okay. And then we also get, is there any like, actually there's a lot to talk about. I'm just going to give the rest of this little piece here. The last piece here is that we have in Tokyo, Romanoff recruits Clint Barton, and the Japanese was killing me. It was like, it was good. Like, I'm not saying it was bad or anything. It was just really funny, like the sentences and stuff that they were using. It was very anime. And yeah, that is like that whole section. So they're like gathering everybody, and they're going to go on a time heist.
Yeah. I don't know. I just like the it's still like PG-13, but I don't know, particularly because again, like my experience is, to be fair, a lot of other people's personal experience with this franchise, but I had been growing up with this series for 10 years at this point,
Mm-hmm.
heavily invested. And obviously, I had matured to a point. This is what, 5 years ago now. Christ. Um, but still, I was like 20-ish, around 20, early 20s. That makes me feel old as well. I The thing that I'm liking more and more is that Marvel are finally leaning into the more mature and the more gritty and darker stuff. Slight foreshadowing for stuff coming up, I suppose. But I think that this is like a really good balance of that, in the sense that even if it's not outright violence and blood and stuff, which you do technically get with his designation, Clint, when he's this vigilante, is Ronin, which is pretty cool. But like, even as much as it's played for laughs, I think that Thor and where he is, particularly like at the beginning of this film, and for most of the film actually, until towards the end, like it's actually really sad. Like he's actively depressed. Obviously, he's put on a lot of weight. He doesn't want to help. Like Clint says, don't give me hope to Natasha and stuff. It's like he wants to help, but he's too scared of being hurt. Whereas Thor just outright refuses until Rocket bribes him with booze. Again, played for laughs, but still, like the sentiment is quite depressing. Really, I just really like. It sounds morbid, but I like seeing the characters that I grew up with and typically are very upbeat and positive and heroic and all the time. I like seeing them having these sort of more human moments and struggles and stuff.
Yeah.
Because it would be so weird if after all of Infinity War, and you would think like the ramifications on their psyches and emotional health and stuff, and even just the beginning, the opening section of this film, realizing that they've lost and there's literally nothing they can do, and they have to live with that for 5 years. I like that they are disparate and away from each other, and isolatory and seclusive. It really works for me personally.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it as well. I thought that I think that this is it's interesting in um I think it's interesting in many ways. I think one of the things that I wanted to specifically talk about was like what you were saying about Thor. Like I think that he I'm glad that they showed that, because I think that it would have been less believable for him to be like trying to run the city slash new
Yeah.
country slash whatever they're calling it. Like I think that would have been like really unrealistic for his character, not only like in what he wants from his life, but also like he's lost everybody. Like he's lost like everybody in his
Mm-hmm.
family, and like doesn't have like a romantic interest anymore. Like he just is just kind of lost and has no goal. I think
Yeah.
is a good way to
and
put it.
and on top of that, as far as he's concerned, he's the reason that all those people are dead, because he didn't go for the head when he should
Yeah.
have, which
Yeah.
is obviously unfair on himself, but like it's also technically not incorrect,
Yeah.
which weighs on him. And I'm glad that we see that, as you say.
Yeah. And I think it's also partially that he has no, now that like Thanos is like dead, like he has nowhere to go, like nothing to do. Like
Mm-hmm.
not only has he lost any like he's lost everybody, but he like has no goal anymore. and he like does kind of address it at the very end of this film, like once like they've actually resolved everything. But like, I mean, there's no way, like as far as he's aware for these 5 years, there's no way out of this. And so
Yeah.
he's just like stuck with no goal, no family, no relationships.
Because he almost took on a leadership role at the end of Ragnarok, you know, like he had the eye patch and he was like Odin, and he saved his people from Asgard as it was blowing up, and he was sort of going to lead them towards Earth. That's what he said, just to establish New Asgard. But the second he tried to do that, he got attacked. Half of his people got killed. His brother got killed. His best friend got killed. So I'm 100% with you that it would have been completely unbelievable if he was running this settlement in any capacity, even if he was trying to run it and running it poorly. It makes far more sense that he would just be like, you are better off without me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just go off and sulk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did really enjoy that. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about this section? Oh, the other thing I wanted to talk about, which I think is like only interesting in hindsight, because so this came out in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously we had a pandemic in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting seeing the parallels of how people, and I know it's a lot more people that disappeared from this tragedy versus like the real world pandemic, but I do think it's really interesting to kind of reflect on that and see how fairly accurate I feel like Marvel got it, where it's like things can never be the same regardless. And yeah, there's no like normal anymore. There's just like a new normal, I guess. So I thought that was really interesting seeing it post pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So
one thing I'd ask, which is on a different note, but mention it sort of in this segment of the film before we go to the next bit. Does the way that this film establishes their rules of time travel make sense to you?
In this section, yes.
Uh-huh.
I feel like in the rest of how it actually plays out, I think that I don't want to say I got lost because I followed the story, but I feel like I just like ended up having like questions which don't need answering. Like it's not like there's plot holes, but more of just like because I'm a curious person and I like to understand how like magic systems work. I like kind of was like poking at like the hey what's this? What's this?
Yeah. Well, like, because I think the way,
I think it
like,
works.
I think the writing in the film is pretty stellar across the board. But like, in my opinion, Bruce very succinctly explains it. Obviously, it sort of played in a very hyper back and forth thing when he's discussing the options with Rhodey and whatnot and Scott. But he basically all he says, and some people seem to get really confused about it, and I can't say it's the easiest thing to understand, but it's like you're on a timeline, this timeline of your life. If you want to loop off of that line and go back there, you can't just like fully close that loop and intersect and carry on. You are going back to that point, but you're carrying on. You know what I mean? So like you're running tangentially alongside it.
Yeah. That part I think made sense. I think I just want to know like what happened to those people. Specifically because like they took their Thanos. Or I guess Thanos inserted himself, so they didn't steal him. But that Thanos doesn't exist anymore.
But again, the altering the past doesn't affect the present.
No. I understand that. But I'm curious what happens on that other timeline, is what I'm saying.
I see. Yeah. And that's a question. like I think that's where people can get confused because they just dive into, well, what happens in this timeline, what happens in this timeline, and you sort of have to just segment it off that any changes they make in the past, anything they do differently, it does create a different timeline. But
Yeah, it has
if
to
it's not covered, it's not important.
because well, I mean, if it doesn't create a different future, then it would mess up the future, and then that gets into the weird like that's when time travel gets really messed up.
Yeah. So like
Is when you're like
no,
going
essentially
back.
the easiest way to explain it is that no matter what they did in this film, the events of Infinity War up to Infinity War and through Infinity War happen regardless, because that's the past. That's happened. So they go back in time, which is still their present. They haven't they're existing as they are. They've just gone backwards. And now it's running tangentially alongside of it. So I think Bruce says something like the past is now their present, which means the future is the past. Like it gets really confusing if you overthink it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that for the fundamentals of what this film is trying to do, it conveys and explains it adequately enough.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's like one of the main sticking points of this film, where people just can't seem to wrap their head around the logic. And like we'll talk about it, but like what Cap ends up doing, like it messes up a timeline. But it's like the film never tries to suggest to you that it isn't messing up a timeline. So people are like, well, what about what Cap did? That's going to mess things up. It's like, well, yeah, in a sense, it's created a different timeline, but that's it. That's where the line. That's where the sentence ends. It's just, yes, he creates an alternate timeline by doing what he did. People are then going like, well, are there two Steve Rogers existing at once? And I'm like, well, no, that's not how it works. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself.
You're not? No, you're totally fine. That's I like the conversation to go wherever it takes us. Okay, so I am going to extremely oversimplify. I apologize, just in the interest of time. You should have already watched this film. Next part is we have the time heist. We have 3 groups. So we have one group that goes back to New York, and they have to recover 3 stones. And then we have one group that goes back, has to. So we've got Rocket and Thor getting one, and then we have Natasha and Clint getting one, and then we have Nebula and Rhodey. There we go. Getting another. So that's the 6 that they're getting. They do very interestingly go back. I think this is, for me, the most interesting part was Tony going back and meeting his dad. For me, I think that was the most interesting part of the time heist itself. I really enjoyed him meeting his dad and being like his dad asking him for advice about how to raise a kid. And like Tony also having a lot of realization moments where he's like, oh, my dad and I are very similar, because he says like, I can't seem to put my own self-interest above the greater good kind of thing. And Tony has the same issue. So
yeah. But they only go back to that point. They only go back in time again because they mess up.
Yes.
And some very interesting things happen.
Yes. That Loki gets away.
2012, Loki just picks up that Tesseract and off he goes. Never going to see him again.
Except for, okay, this is where I get like, I don't, frustrated is the wrong word. This is where I get annoyed, because it's like I have now, like, I know that there's a Loki TV show, and I know that there's like a Black Widow movie. So like, what's going on? You see what I mean? Like I have like enough information to be annoyed and feel like what's happening, but not enough to understand what's happening. So
yeah, well, you'll find out. You know.
Okay. Okay. That is the time heist, excuse me, sequence. I love that he mentioned Die Hard, by the way. I know we didn't mention that earlier, but that cracked me up. Not that I've seen Die Hard, but he's like, Die Hard? I was like, what? He's like, wait, that's not a time travel movie. I thought that was funny. Okay. So we then get back. There's a lot of stuff that happens. Get back, make a new glove.
Wait, whoa, 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 whoa. Hold the phone. Hold the phone.
Okay.
Thor and Rocket in Asgard. He gets Mjolnir back.
Yeah.
From a past version of Mjolnir. So he proves to himself that he's still worthy, which is arguably my favorite moment of the film.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the whole, up until that point, he was like dejected and thought that he was a loser and failed at everything. And he tries to call Mjolnir back and it comes back to him. So it proves that he is still worthy, regardless of what he thinks.
Did he?
And that's after a pep talk from his mum.
Was Mjolnir sitting around or did he steal it from the other Thor?
He would have stolen it from the other Thor. Because his
That's
Mjolnir
really
was destroyed, obviously.
No, I know, but like, I'm saying, like, because you know how like Thor just kind of leaves Mjolnir around sometimes.
So you're asking, like, was the Thor from that time just
like,
casually flying around Asgard somewhere and then yoink?
Yep.
Yeah, go with that headcanon. That's pretty funny.
Good, because I like that.
Yeah. And then you have like Nebula and Rhodey getting the Space Stone, and you get the funny thing of the replication of the very first Guardians film with Quill dancing and then getting knocked out. And then they try to get away, but then Nebula gets hijacked because the two versions.
She works
of her,
on a network.
That the Wi-Fi wires got crossed, and the past version of her started seeing stuff and showing things like, and that's how the Thanos of that time realizes what's going on. That's pretty important. And then technically, arguably the most important thing is that Natasha and Clint fight on the planet to get the Soul Stone, and then Natasha dies.
That does happen.
She Black Widow is dead. And then Clint is very sad about it. And then Nebula from the past, who is obviously still bad because she was a bad guy to begin with, takes the place of current Nebula, who is a good guy, of course. And then they all go back, and that's the end of the time heist. Just, I felt like that there were some big leaps there, and I was like, some of those things are pretty important. So,
yeah, no, I definitely agree that they're important, but I also am trusting the audience to have watched the film.
I know.
Watch the film, guys. Why are you here if you didn't? To listen to my voice. I know. No, I'm just kidding. You're right. All that stuff does happen. There was one very important moment that I missed as well that we didn't talk about. One, Scott's taco gets all messed up. That was really sad. I was like, oh my God, his taco.
But Bruce gives him another one.
He gives him 2 tacos that he made himself. I was like, that's so cute. I also loved Nebula's moment walking past. She's like, watch out, there's an idiot on the street.
Yeah.
That was one of the best moments of the film for me. Because she says it so intensely and so seriously. It just keeps going.
It's just funny as well because Scott has like basically no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know who you are. I don't know what's happening. There's a raccoon that just walked past me. What is happening?
Yeah.
Because when they're talking about doing the time heist, like he's just, I think it actually cuts to him at one point, and he's just giving like this blissfully ignorant grin, as if he's just happy to be there and nodding along with what's being said, even though he hasn't got a clue.
Yeah.
Which
This
is
is why I was like so shocked. He's like, I can't stop thinking about doing like a time heist. And I'm like, with what brain?
God bless Paul Rudd.
You and what brain? Who thought this up and told you to tell somebody else?
Yeah.
Okay. So the reason why I kind of wanted to like not skip over, because those are important moments, but I think my favorite moments of the film, for the most part, are in the like the last sequence here, the fighting. And there's a lot of moments that I wanted to make sure that we talked about.
Okay.
So first, really loved the way that they did the snap moment in particular, because it was really simple. Like they didn't do like a zoom out. This is what's happening with everybody. Like they didn't do anything like that. It was a very simple moment where Scott walks up to the window and there's a bunch of birds and there's a phone call.
Yeah.
And that's the confirmation that you get that like, hey, it worked. And that was enough confirmation for me. That was just the right amount.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very good show, don't tell.
Very simple. I enjoyed that thoroughly. I
And
will
also,
say,
like, one thing I'll call out before we move on is that an underappreciated moment is Bruce deciding to be the one to do the snap, because he was like, the radiation that gauntlet gives off when you snap is mostly gamma radiation, which is what turned him into the Hulk in the first place. And he says, you know, it's like I was made for this. And again, talking about like divine intervention, omnipotent thing, like everything happening for a reason. Bruce has struggled like this entire time of why did he not just die? Why can't he, you know, stop this thing inside of him? What's his purpose?
somebody edit "What Was I Made For?" Billie Eilish for this moment.
No, let's not do that. Let's not do that.
That song is so
Somebody probably already has, to be fair.
good. God, if you have, or if anybody have seen that, please send it to me.
But I think that is a very validating moment and like a big character growth moment, which is understated, which I very much appreciate.
It's a good moment.
Yeah. Sorry, continue.
That's okay. I don't remember what I was gonna say. I'm sure it'll come back to me. Oh my god, I loved the like horror sequence, by the way. So Thanos comes, bombs, building collapses. There's a horror sequence that kind of happens. It's like very like Dead Spacey almost.
Yeah. Very Aliens.
Yeah, it was cool. I liked that. It's an interesting moment. Added a little bit of a different vibe there for a second. Let's see. So, okay. There's a lot of stuff that happens here.
Yes.
There's a lot of implications that I have questions about. I just want to talk about. I just want to point out stuff like that. One, there's a Gamora in this timeline now. It's a different Gamora, but there is a Gamora. Interesting. Hopefully, since she fell in love once, she'll fall in love again. Cheesy.
Maybe.
Who knows?
But,
Who knows?
you know, she doesn't have any of the lived experience. She's Gamora from before the first Guardians. So
yeah, that is true. And also, I think that like obviously I'm at a different time. I don't know what happens past this. But I also think you could make an argument that Quill would be like, hey, this isn't the same person. Like, so it feels kind of weird. Even though it is the same person, you know, but it's not.
Yeah. But you like that would mess me up.
It would mess me up as well.
Like you're looking at the same person, but you know that they're not, but they are. And I think that what you originally said is like exactly the thought process that Quill probably would have of like, well, if it happened once, it could happen again, you know? But
But
hey, time will
then
tell.
if it does happen again, it's still not the same person.
No, it's not. The person that you had all these
It's not like a memory
great,
loss thing.
yeah, the person that you had all of these great experiences with that you can't replicate, like she's gone and she's not coming back.
Mm-hmm.
But she's there in front of you. That is very. Quill is already a pretty unstable man,
Yeah.
so
Very
God forbid.
traumatizing.
Yeah.
Okay. So I loved this. Like, there's a couple of moments in here that I was like just absolutely gagged at. I was so excited.
Mm-hmm.
So we get like Thanos comes down. He's just waiting, and they're like, "What is he doing?" And he's like, just sitting there, which I thought was cool. I thought it was a cool. Oh my god, you guys! I'm so sorry. We should delete this whole recording. I can't believe I haven't mentioned it before. Him saying, "Yeah, that is America's ass." I can't believe I didn't talk about this.
Yeah.
Best moment of the film. Anyways, keep going. So when all of the so we get the Thanos fight, they start fighting him again. It's almost kind of like a not scene for scene repeat, but like they're kind of losing. He's really strong.
Yeah.
Just is. I love the moment when you start seeing like the holes in reality, almost whatever you want to call the portal things, and everybody starts showing up. I was literally okay. You can't ask Luna because she doesn't speak English, but if you could ask Luna, she would tell you that I was like, "Where's Wakanda? Where's Wakanda? Where's Wakanda?" And I was just waiting, and then like for them to show up, I was like, I was so excited. I was very excited. I was like, "Oh my god, it's Wakanda!"
I cannot tell you. Like, I think we've discussed this kind of thing before. European, particularly, I can speak for English audiences. We are typically very silent moviegoers. We don't really react at all. Even if it's opening night and like it's fully packed and fans only, you know. Even then, you might get like a hoot or a cheer from someone, maybe, but very, very, very rarely. I can count on one hand the number of times in my life where I have had a cinema experience where people just lose their minds. And this was one of them. Beginning weirdly, we went past it, but weirdly, when they're looking, the Tony, Steve, and Thor are looking at Thanos sat down, and they're like, I think it's Cap that says it's probably a trap, and Thor's like, man, I don't care, and he summons Mjolnir and Stormbreaker, armors up at the same time, and for some reason his hair gets braided.
Yeah, I liked that.
It's like I get the armor thing because that's happened before, but you just got a brand new hairdo. Like you got struck by lightning and your hair got braided. That's interesting.
Very intricate magic.
Yeah, I guess. But yeah,
He has
weirdly, that's
fantastic
when the
control over
audience,
the lightning.
I guess so, just twizzled everything and twirled it up.
Yeah,
Yeah, in a split second.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. I hear braiding is actually that easy in real life.
It is.
Yeah, weirdly, that was when people started losing their mind. But yeah, as you say, all of the portals started opening up. You know, you get the Cap's completely by himself. I mean, of course, we skip past it, but Cap worthy of Mjolnir. You know,
and worthy of like, okay, there is a moment where he's like, I want the big one.
I mean,
I thought that was funny.
technically, it is funny, you know, but Stormbreaker doesn't have the same. I don't know what you call it, like runic
Requirements.
spell on it that has whoever holds this shall be worthy of the power of Thor or whatever, which I think is like understandable considering how Stormbreaker was made, but also a little bit weird if it does the same thing and can harness lightning the same way. But
yeah,
potato. But yeah, like, and weirdly, even though it's the first time that we know of that Cap's lifted the thing, he's like super competent with it.
I mean, he has watched Thor fight with it quite.
I mean,
a bit.
sure, but like that's the same as saying I've watched plenty of professional football games.
Oh,
know?
I gaslight myself into thinking I can do stuff I've watched other people do all the time.
Nah, that's a dangerous game.
Doesn't mean I can.
What? Yeah. I could wingsuit. It'll be fine. Yeah, like
I don't watch those videos. I'll be honest; those scare me.
And then like Cap's all defeated, and he's standing off against Thanos' entire army at this point. And then
he gets up. He gets up.
Yeah, and he straps the shield back on.
I loved that moment. I loved that. Because the thing is like the one of the there's an anime, I don't know which one, and I'm sure there's like this has been quoted in other stuff, but the first time I heard it was in an anime, was where they were like, well, bravery isn't anything in particular besides being scared and going anyways, like getting up anyways. Because he's like, he has to be terrified. There's a huge army in front of him, not to mention Thanos. Like, he can't even beat just Thanos, like, let alone the implications of all of those, like, enemies being there. And he, like, has to be, like, half a second from pooping his pants. You know what I mean?
Well, he knows he's going to lose, but he gets up anyway.
Gets up anyways. Yep. Yeah. I
That's
think
Steve Rogers.
Very cool.
That's Captain America right there. But yeah, then you get the crackle over the audio of Sam saying you left, calling back to Winter Soldier when they were racing each other.
Yep.
And then they will come out, and you get Black Panther, and you get all the Guardians back, and Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, and then you get like Wasp and Scarlet Witch and Valkyrie.
I literally didn't recognize Wasp, by the way. I was like, who is that? And I was like, oh yeah.
That's an indictment on her character if I've ever heard one. Yeah, no, I think it's so gratuitous, but it's such a good time at the like you can understand that it's so blatantly just fan service and trying to get you hyped up, but that doesn't mean it doesn't get you hyped up.
Yeah, it absolutely did get me hyped up. I was like, oh my god, just like that.
And he finally gets to say Avengers Assemble.
I know.
After all this time.
My favorite part was that he like yelled it halfway and then stopped.
Yeah, he's like, Avengers Assemble.
Yeah, I was like, all right, drama.
Would have been
nobody
super
heard
funny.
The second word.
Would have been funny in like a blooper or something if he said assemble and everybody was like, what? I didn't hear you. What are you saying?
That's what it's like. It's not like he has any magic that's like amplifying his voice. So why did he say it so quiet?
Yeah. Maybe it's just an unspoken thing that they all know,
Fair enough. They're like, when he yells Avengers, the next word he's going to say is assemble.
Yeah, that's just a known quantity. Doesn't matter.
That part did crack me up, especially because I always leave the subtitles on. It was like all caps Avengers and then all lowercase.
Yeah.
It was so good. I was like, okay, drama, okay. Okay, so we get this huge fight scene. There's a lot of really cool stuff in this fight scene. I'm sure we'll kind of jump around a lot. There's one thing. Okay. I don't even like, I'm 100% confident if you watch this film and you didn't at least tear up somewhere. Regardless of if it was like a hype tear up, because I'm very prone to crying when I get really excited. I'm also prone, obviously I cry when I get sad. So I'm just prone to crying at emotional moments in films. So there has to be a moment that got whoever watched this, right? I'm curious what moments were the ones that got you. Because there's one moment, because I there's a couple of moments that like made me like kind of tear up / maybe a couple tears fell down my face. Like, for example, the very end with like Tony.
Sure.
The part that what's so funny, the part that actually got me, there were two parts of that got me. We'll get to that in a second. Actually, I'm gonna hold off on that one. The one that made me like full cry. as the kids call it, open mouth sobbing. No, I wasn't open mouth sobbing, but I was like crying, like full crying. Is the moment where she's like, "Don't worry, I'll get you there." And then it's like all of the women. I like literally started crying. I was like, "Oh my god!" I was
Mm.
so like that was such a really really cool and really powerful moment. And then of course the wasp shows up, and I was like, "What is she doing?" I'm just kidding. I knew who she was at that point.
Yeah.
um, no, that was the feelings that I felt in that moment, indescribable. That was so intense because it's like women are so cool. Women are so cool. Women are amazing. Women are beautiful, they're powerful, they're strong, smart, amazing. And to see all of like the powerful women that have been across these films just like gathered there,
Mm-hmm.
and they like, and you believe them. She's like, "I'll get you there." And it's true. Like it's true. And they
What I
like
mean,
have
most of the most overpowered characters in the franchise are women.
Mhm.
Like Captain Marvel is obviously just OP.
Mhm.
Scarlet Witch, even though, like, trust me, you have seen nothing yet, but she is ridiculously overpowered as well. I mean, to be fair though, in this film during this fight, she is essentially the one that almost solo takes Thanos down.
Mhm.
Like she just lifts him up. He's like, I don't know who you are, and she's like, you will. She lifts him up and starts ripping his armor off. And
Mhm.
he only got away because he called the bombardment down.
Mhm.
Like if he didn't do that, he'd been donezo. And
Yeah.
he was just floating there. He was like, oh, I guess I've got to accept this. Couldn't do anything about it.
Mhm.
Nobody else can do that to it. You know, even Captain Marvel struggled. But to be fair, when he went for the headbutt and she just didn't move, that's pretty cool. And then even you have like more minor characters. Pepper's got her own Iron Man armor now, which is
Oh,
cool.
that was another one that made me tear up because I was like,
Yeah.
she's okay. First of all, talk about design popping off. Her
Mm.
suit and powers and like everything, the design, so much cooler than Iron Man. I'm so sorry. I know, rest in peace, whatever. So much cooler than Iron Man. I was so excited. Anyways.
Um, and like, granted, I don't know how much she would have helped specifically, but having somebody like super intelligent like Shuri there as well, you know, with her gauntlets or whatever they are, and Okoye with a spear. Like I feel like
Oh.
the badass women of Wakanda are like dope anyway, but again, like realistically, I don't know comparatively how much they could have actually contributed, but still, the fact that they were all there and got to have that sort of badass walking forward moment, and you saw them all just one by one pop in and fill the screen. Yeah, very cool.
It was such an amazing moment. Like it's so incredible. And I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Loved it so much. Still simp over Okoye. I
Yeah.
was like, oh my god, look at her, look at her go. I will say I really, really enjoyed um like Pepper's moments.
Mm.
Like the way that she fought side by side with Tony was really
Yeah.
cool. Like the
Firing
fact
the
that she
chest
like
beam out.
she showed up, helped him, like that was so cool. She's
Because
really an amazing
it
woman.
it's what she's been doing the entire time, just without the suit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like she's been the one thing that has sort of grounded Tony and always looked after him, even if he never really acknowledged or admitted to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then here she shows up in arguably like his biggest moment of need when he's literally on his ass. And she, you know, gets him up on his feet again, and they fight alongside each other. It's like that's pretty cool. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one other major moment in the film that I want to cover, but it's like the very end stuff. So
Mhm.
what else do you want to cover from this fight and from the film?
there's too many things to mention. It's just the minor stuff for me, like you know, early on in the fight, Drax jumps on some big guy's back and is just like is stabbing him and screaming. It's like that's a callback in and of itself. If you know, kind of thing. Yeah, like Spidey doing the whole instant kill thing. Another bit nice little callback, and you actually get to see it in action. It's Cap throwing Mjolnir, Spider-Man webbing onto it, carrying the gauntlet, and then Valkyrie on her Pegasus. It's like, what the hell is going on? And it's just an
The Avengers
overload.
assembled, Sam. That's what happened.
They did indeed assemble. Yeah, and again, I did say it when we were talking about Captain Marvel, but she does become a bit of a Deus Ex Machina in terms of, the bombardment is happening and then it just stops and all the cannons go up into the sky and they're like, what are they aiming at? Something just entered the atmosphere. And she just like bodies basically everything without even trying. But it's like, that it's okay. I can allow it.
Yeah.
So
I have had, as somebody that watches anime, I have a lot of experience with overpowered characters.
yeah.
So yeah, I think it doesn't bother me. I actually really liked that moment. So yeah, I did really enjoy. There was one really interesting moment where Thanos like pulls one of the stones and then punches her. I thought that was really interesting. I kind of liked that. Like, I thought that was an interesting moment.
And that he pulled technically the correct stone, because he pulled the power stone out, which gave him the strength to punch her away. Which it's smart. Like, that is, if you are capable of holding the stone, which Thanos is, obviously some people aren't, but like, if you aren't allowed, if she's stopping you from closing the gauntlet to use its abilities, then the next best thing would be to rip one out and essentially just knock her in the face with it. So yeah,
I like that. Yeah. Another thing that I really enjoyed was almost the impending doom of like watching Doctor Strange's like reaction to everything. Like in the way that him and Tony kind of locked eyes a couple of times, like throughout the fight, and like you could kind of see the destiny kind of weighing on him. And I thought that was really interesting, the way that they kind of showed it, where like it was like this like the emergency moment that I didn't want to happen has to happen.
Well, it's not even that he doesn't want it to happen. It's that it yes, it has to happen, but like Strange says at the start of the fight, Tony's like, I'm paraphrasing, but like, are we on the right track? Is this the one where we win? And Strange is like, if I tell you what's going to happen, it won't happen. And just after Thanos knocks Captain Marvel away, they look at each other, Tony and Strange, and Stephen essentially telling Tony without telling him, just puts his finger up. He's like, this is the one where we win. Like, we have one chance. This goes one way if we want to win. And Tony understands that. He kind of might not necessarily understand exactly what he has to do, but also he knows what he has to do, kind of. You know what I mean? So yeah, again, very good way of showing and not telling. I think this film excels at that, really, across the board.
It really does. I thought that was really incredible. Okay. I'm ready to talk about the last piece. Is there anything else that you want to bring up?
No. I'm
Okay,
good.
so the last piece is, unfortunately, Tony has to do the snap because he
Hmm.
steals the stones. It's like his Iron Man technology, so it tracks that he would be able to transfer it. Um, and he's able to steal the stones as an emergency and do the snap and fix everything at the cost of his own life because he's not made out of gamma radiation.
No.
So yeah, it kind of messes him up, which I thought was another interesting show don't tell moment where it's like Hulk got really messed up, and look how bad it turned out when somebody that's not the Hulk did it. You know?
Yeah. But see, the interesting thing though, and I don't know whether you were going to touch on it, but if you look at when Thanos puts the gauntlet on in like Infinity War, when he completes it and he has all the stones,
Mm-hmm.
he is like actively screaming in agony
Mm-hmm.
as the power is surging through him. Same goes for Hulk earlier in this film, you know. But Tony, you can tell it's hurting him, but he's not screaming. And you'd think for someone who is considerably far less powerful than
Than
both of
either of
those other two
those.
people,
Mm-hmm.
the strength and resolve that Tony must have to sort of weather that for the brief amount of time that he had to, you know. I think again that's kind of like a moment that people acknowledge but don't really consider. And like people say, well, I think it's actually quite an interesting theory, is that because both Thanos and the Hulk are incredibly strong beings, they've never really had to experience any real pain before. So when they're exposed to it, it has like an extreme effect on them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But Tony is like an incredibly tortured soul, and has experienced arguably nothing but pain throughout his life. And therefore, he, prior to this moment and also within it, is able to sort of wield and harness that pain in a way that the others just haven't really. They haven't had to learn to do that, whereas Tony has. I think it's just a very powerful and poignant moment for him as a full circle for his character.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Um, yeah, there's a couple of interesting things that I think happen in this scene. One of the things that really got me was like uh Peter's panic.
Hmm.
Him saying like Mr. Stark, Mr. Stark, like the way that he was panicking, that kind of got
Yeah.
me. Um that I think that like moment made me tear up a little bit. And I I the how do I want to phrase this? The way that Pepper handles herself, and I know she has experience with this, like she's been dealing with Tony for quite some time,
Hmm.
but like the way that she doesn't like cry or beg for him to stay or do anything, right? She's so strong and resolute in that moment, right? Like you can rest now, like you can truly rest,
Yeah.
and we'll be okay, and I'll take care of everything,
And
as she
that's
always does.
and that's when Tony goes
Hmm.
after he hears her say that,
Yeah.
you know, because like I think it arguably it got me choked up when I watched it the first time, and it's obviously a very moving scene anyway in its own right. Um, but like I think there are so many good choices made in this scene, like having Tony's last words be "I am Iron Man," which obviously ended the first Iron Man film and was improv from Downey,
Hmm.
you know, and it takes on a completely different meaning. You know, Thanos does the whole cocky "I am inevitable" thing, and like the surprise that the "I am Iron Man" thing was, it sort of he finally gets the one up on him. But the fact that he doesn't speak, you know, because there is very easily a version of this scene where he is dying slowly, but he gets to say goodbye to everyone and stuff. But he doesn't. Like he's sort of very resolutely writhing in pain, and everybody is talking to him, but he's just sort of, it's almost like he's taking one last look at the people that are most important to him, you know?
Yeah.
Like Peter, obviously, and then Pepper, and Rhodey's there, obviously, as well. But they don't have like a moment necessarily. Rhodey's sort of more like a knowing kind of nod, really. Yeah, I think because when Pepper shows up, that's when Tony does the only real reaction that he does. He sort of gives a little smile to her.
He does say something. I can't remember. He says like, I think he says her name or like hi Pep or like I can't remember, something like that. Like he says something very
he
brief.
might try to say something, but there's certainly not like
It's not 100%
definitive
coherent.
word. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can say that maybe he's I think it is. I think he does try to say Pep or something. But yeah, I hijacked your point, which I'm prone
You're
to
fine.
doing. But I think that because it's only after she says that Tony lets go, and then once Tony lets go, that's when she breaks down.
Yeah, once he's gone, like once
Yeah,
he's like actually gone, then she like lets herself break down.
because
But like
she's been
that's,
strong for him this whole time.
I know. I can't imagine like loving somebody so much. Like I can't imagine loving somebody so much. But like I mean like holding, not being gone at that moment. Like I feel like I would be sobbing, right? But she doesn't cry at all. She's just like, "Hey, like it's okay." And she's so calm and doesn't break down until it's done.
Yeah. And like on top of that, you've got to keep in mind that contextually he has like a kid now, you know?
Yeah.
Obviously we get that touched on a bit later on, but like he does that, and Pepper doesn't plead him to stay or anything because that they both sort of know, you know. In some way this was the best case scenario for Tony because we've seen it before where he just doesn't rest.
Mm-hmm.
Like he saved New York by throwing the bomb through the portal in the first Avengers film, and then he got PTSD and he was trying to protect people and prevent that kind of thing from happening. So he made Ultron, and obviously Ultron went wrong. So that was on him and he had to solve that, and he blew up a country because of it. You know, it's sort of, I think in a way, Tony would have just kept spiraling because he cares so much about everyone and wanting to protect everyone because that's all he's ever wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
That him going out this way is probably certainly what Pepper would want for him. You know, like if he had to go as soon as he's done something that ensures that they're all safe.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to say, I really hope, because I feel like it would be a huge missed opportunity, that they do something with his daughter.
You would hope so.
Because that would be so cool. Like, and give it time because she's really young, right? So as long as we're not doing like huge time jumps, and they're kind of keeping it like in like quote unquote like real world ish time, like we've got like another 10-ish years maybe until we would see like a young version of her, like early 20s, something like that. Think that would be so cool.
Yeah, I will dissuade the notion we haven't seen her since.
Right.
But I do think that I agree it would be a missed opportunity. Interesting tidbit, just because we're here. There was a scene that is readily available for you to watch, like on YouTube or stuff, you can find it, where in the same way when Thanos snapped, he went to sort of like that weird spiritual plane thing and saw a young Gamora. there was a scene shot where when Tony snapped, the same thing happened, but he saw a grown-up version of his daughter, and they sort of the premise was the daughter being like, I understand you did what you had to do, kind of thing, and I miss you, and I'll carry your legacy forward. That sentiment, not those words. And that was like the one thing that one person, I guess, that Tony got to say goodbye to in a way. Glad that it was cut from the film. But they cast, I can't remember the actress's name. It was the lead actress from 13 Reasons Why.
Oh,